certain feelings we don't sit down to think about. They find us when we're not trying. Regret is usually one of them. Sometimes it isn't even a thought, it's a reaction, a tightening you don't plan for, a flinch that happens before you know why, that quiet pull inward when a memory brushes past you without asking, I know better, or worse, I ignored what I knew. It doesn't arrive with drama. It doesn't demand your attention. It slips in sideways. You're doing something ordinary, waiting at a light, standing in line, holding something that suddenly feels heavier than it should. And your body responds before the story does. You don't replay everything. You don't need to. One decision is enough. One pause you didn't take. One moment where the weight of who you were presses up against who you are now. There's no backstory yet, no defense, just that familiar pressure, like your chest already knows the verdict. A lot of us were taught that regret means we did something wrong, that it's evidence of bad judgment, weak instincts, a failure we should have outgrown by now. But regret is rarely about the action itself. It's about what happens when we look back at who we were with information we didn't have yet, and then punish that version of ourselves for not knowing it. Somewhere along the way, regret stopped being a feeling and became a ruling. I should have left sooner. I should have spoken up. I should have seen it coming. I should have known better. And the tension lives right there between who you were and who you are now, between the self that was trying and the self that understands more. You're not just remembering the past, you're judging it. Here's the part we don't say often enough. Regret usually forms around the choices that once made sense. The relationship that gave you something you genuinely needed. The job that offered stability when you didn't have any. The silence that kept the peace when speaking felt too risky. The loyalty that protected you from being alone. At that time, those choices weren't foolish. They were adaptive. They were shaped by who you were then, your capacity, your fears, your hopes, your limits. A lot of us learned early that survival meant adjusting ourselves, being agreeable, being strong, being patient, being needed, being quiet. Those strategies worked. They kept us safe. They helped us belong. They helped us endure. But when you outgrow the conditions that made those strategies necessary, they start to ache. And instead of saying, this no longer fits, we say, why didn't I see this sooner? Regret becomes the way we retroactively demand wisdom from a version of ourselves who hadn't lived long enough to earn that wisdom yet. That's the quiet cruelty of hindsight shame. It ignores context. It ignores capacity. It ignores the simple truth that growth only happens after the moment, never before it. This is where unbecoming actually begins. Not with insight, not with forgiveness rituals, not with rewriting the past. It begins with mercy. You're not wrong for becoming the person you became. You didn't fail by staying. You didn't fail by trusting. You didn't fail by hoping longer than you should have. You were responding to what you knew with the tools you had inside the emotional climate you were living in. And now you know more. That doesn't mean the past version of you was deficient. It means the current version of you is informed. Regret then isn't proof you failed. It's proof you grew. And growth can feel like betrayal because it asks you to loosen loyalty to an identity you once needed. The one who endured, the one who explained everything away, the one who made it work no matter the cost. Unbecoming doesn't ask you to reject that self. It asks you to stop punishing them. There's often grief here, not the obvious kind. It's so subtle, it's often overlooked. Grief for the time you can't give back, for the softness you didn't know how to protect yet, for the clarity that only arrived after the fact. And sometimes there's relief mixed in. Relief that you don't have to keep defending that choice. Relief that you're allowed to see it clearly now. Relief that you're not required to repeat it to prove anything. You might still wish it had gone differently. You might still feel the sting when the memory surfaces. Unbecoming regret doesn't erase that. It just changes the tone of the conversation you have with yourself when it does. Less accusation, more understanding. Less what's wrong with me, more of course that's what I did. So here's your sip of the day. You don't have to absolve your past self. You don't have to celebrate the lesson. You don't have to turn regret into meaning. It's enough to stop punishing who you were for not being who you are now. Regret doesn't mean you're late. It means you've arrived. And this moment of mercy is often the first quiet step of unbecoming. You don't have to know what comes next. You're allowed to pause here. Before we wrap up, I just want to say this. If caffeine and clarity has felt like a steady place for you, something you keep company with in your week, there are a few simple ways to help this space keep growing. You can subscribe to the podcast or the channel. It doesn't cost anything, but it truly does support the work. You can leave comments, and if it feels right for you, there's the option to donate or visit the shop and choose something that feels like it belongs with you. Thank you for listening, for being here, and for helping make room for conversations like this when they're needed the most. This is Unbecoming, a series about the selves that we had to become to survive and the courage it takes to let them go. If this stayed with you, you don't need to do anything with it. Just let it sit. I'm glad you stopped by. Until next time.